Truth is, we're in so much debt that the only way out is revolution or war. So now the question is, which side are you on?
Man, that timing worked out perfectly as we get ready to transition to our next speaker, Dr. Cesar Cruz. He's gonna close out the day for us, and he got the revolutionary music all ready for us, so we're ready to go. Andrea Garcia is going to introduce him. So Andrea, I'm going to pass it on to you, and then I'm gonna get out the way.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Dr. Cruz. It is such an honor to see you again. Love it. Love it, love it, love it. Great to have you back at Toro. I did a little bit of background, and I found something that you wrote earlier this year, and I believe it's earlier this year, that I thought would be appropriate. I'm just going to read one paragraph before I read your bio. I just thought it was a perfect introduction. So, quote, this is from a letter that you wrote. Worrying, if it has already happened, may present an opportunity for reflection, and that reflection may present an opportunity for wisdom. And so this is just one paragraph. It's a beautiful long letter, and hopefully I'll put the link on the chat, but I think it just is appropriate for reflection after the election and a great introduction to your conversation. Let me go ahead and read this bio, and it's a fantastic bio. From marching 76 straight miles to hunger striking for 26 days, Dr. Cesar Cruz has dedicated his life to justice. Born in Mexico, he migrated to the United States with a single mother. Dr. Cruz is from Jalisco, Mexico, of Huicol, Mexico roots. Cesar grew up in South Central LA and moved to study at UC Berkeley, earning a BA in history. A 24-year vet in education, he most recently served as the dean at Arise High in Oakland. Cesar is the co-founder of Homies Empowerment Program, which is now entering its 11th year. The grassroots organization is evolving to become a community-based school for youth who have been given up on. Their mission is to help youth channel the healer, warrior, scholar, and hustler within on their journey towards individual and community emancipation. Dr. Cruz is also the author of Revenge of the Illegal Alien and Bang for Freedom. He was the first Mexican immigrant male to receive his doctorate in education leadership at Harvard University. And he is considered one of America's 30 education thought leaders by the Christian Science Monitor. However, his proudest, and he is proud to be a husband and father of 3 children, Olin, Amaru, and I know I'm going to, and Quetzali. So Dr. Cruz, I'm going to pass it now on to you. Thank you again for being here. Always, always an honor to see you.
Oh, thank you so much. First of all, can you hear me okay? Are you able to hear me okay, good people?
Yeah, we can hear you. Uh-huh.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. You know, it's hard to do this because right now I'm staring at some beautiful pictures, and then I'm also staring at a green dot. And so it's difficult, right? And then there's such a mix of emotions. Also, those of you that have tuned in all day, you've heard such rich perspectives from a lot of folks. And I don't know if you ever experienced this, but if you ever have to sort of share your thoughts, if you ever go through self-doubt. And so I have been going through a lot of self-doubt, and it has shown up this way. And I think it's a manifestation of the world that we live in, where some of us get exposed to a type of education that actually lowers our self-esteem when we don't know who we are or where we come from or what we're about. And so I went through this feeling of like, what do I have to say? Probably nothing. What do I have to share that's useful? Probably nothing. And so going through a lot of that self-doubt and I have what's called the empire within syndrome. I still believe in a lot of what the system has taught me that I'm less than and not equal to. And so I have to apologize to even begin that way, that I hope you understand that my voice And the journey to find myself over almost the last 50 years, I feel like I'm just getting started. And we're always in the process of becoming, or even finding ourselves even worthy to share palabra. I wish that we could do this in a different format where we were in person and we could have a conversation. And so I want to apologize that it's going to feel less of a conversation. And I hope a humble way of sharing some palabra and some word. And what I did is I brought some friends with me. I brought some different words with me. I brought some perspectives with me. And I'm also a nerd, y'all. So I also put a PowerPoint together to really kind of frame this journey. And so thank you, Louise, for that. And so for all of you that are listening to this or will listen to this later, thank you so much for being here. All of our words matter. Our perspectives matter. And we live in such a world that we never listen to each other. So you are giving the most revolutionary gift, which is you're giving of your time and you're willing to listen. I also want to name that as human beings, we're wired to not receive counter data very well. You know, we have some fancy term called cognitive dissonance. And that's just fancy talk for if you say something that opposes my worldview, I don't want to have anything to do with you. And now we're part of a cancel culture where we eliminate each other and we don't have patience for our uncles and our grandmothers and our aunties and our partners and our friends who have a different political view or political leaning. So I hope I don't get canceled by you. I hope that we can have a mature conversation. I hope that we can hear each other out and we don't have to agree to all the points of view. But what I try to do is do something that hasn't been done a lot in the last 4 years, is to focus on some facts and to bring some primary facts and primary documents to your attention as we think about this election. And so with your permission, is it okay to get started? All right, y'all. Now, I prepared 700 hours worth of stuff. And then, so Louise is going to have to help me out. Andrea is going to have to help me out because you're going to have to let me know when I have 5 minutes left and a minute left. Because otherwise, I'm going to keep you here till you're all zoomed out. And that's the last thing that anybody wants. So thank you so much, Lisa. I appreciate what you're saying. Lisa just shared on the chat, says we need to bring back democratic, and it stopped right there. But I'm hoping it's conversation, ideals, and that it's beautiful to debate. It's beautiful to disagree in an agreeable way. And so with your permission, I just want to share some of the perspectives that I hope will be fruitful. So I'm going to try to share my screen. Let me see if I can do that. I think I need permission from Michael or Louise or someone. And so if you don't mind granting
No,
me,
you should be able to do it right at the bottom there.
yes, it just says I don't have, it says you cannot start screen share while the other participant is sharing. So right now I'm not able.
Oh, my guess is Ijeoma may still have his audio shared. Yeah, so Ijeoma is sharing computer sound, it says. So Ijeoma needs to stop sharing, and then that should work for you.
It just happened. Thank you so much for both of you being awesome. That's why you're here. That's why they pay you the big bucks. And so just thank you, both of you, for that. And so these are some humble election thoughts, and I hope that they're useful. I want to start off by asking a couple of things, both permission to speak, permission to share a point of view that may or may not counter yours, and the biggest permission I want to ask, I would like to ask your permission to be heard. And I don't want to undermine that, because for many people, many of you who are there, were oftentimes not heard and were actually systematically silenced. So would it be okay to continue?
Absolutely.
Bless you all. Bless you all. Thank you. Thank you so much. And so, you know, I want to talk about some of the election stuff, and I'm framing a national conversation around seeing steps in the right direction. Florida just had a major movement and became the 8th state to pass at the very minimum $15 minimum wage. And we know that that's not enough to live in most of the country. It's really difficult, but we are in such dire straits when we think about economics that we have 35 states that won't even get to this minimum. So what we ask ourselves is, how are people surviving economically in the first place? The second thing is, We want to talk about some facts. And so here's some facts about what's happening in America during this election season. We have over 50 million people that are facing food insecurity. And these are some statistics from the organization that runs over 200 food banks all across the United States. But what does this actually look like on the ground? And what does it look like right now in 2020? Let's take a look.
People like myself really need some help, especially good people that's really, you know, trying to be a productive member of society.
It's hard. I have my 2 grandchildren with me and looking after them, and just have to ask for a little help sometimes.
You don't know what's going to happen and when you're going to get evicted. It's horrible. It's horrific. It's traumatizing.
You're still going to have to pay that money back, you know, so all you're doing is getting into a hole.
This work for more than 20 years. I've never seen anything like it. Just unemployment combined with even people being underemployed right now, working 2 or 3 part-time jobs.
We don't know what to do, you know? And we're looking to the leaders for extra help. Now it's a toss-up between rent, car insurance, lights, gas.
So as we think about this election and this season, yes, we have seen some major victories on a national scale. When we think about the campaigns for Omar, Ocasio-Cortez, Presley, and Tlaib, we have seen historic victories yet again, and we think that that's very powerful. We have also seen that for the very first time in this nation's history, and regardless of your political party, whether you're Republican, Democrat, Independent, whatever your political leaning, we have never had someone who identifies as a woman or a woman of color in an elected position as president or vice president of the country. So regardless of what you think 2020 is, 2020 in many ways is historic and herstory times to have someone like Kamala Harris in the office of the vice presidency. Now, as I've been talking to the community and listening to the community, this is what some of the people were sharing with me, and I want to share with you this quote. Let me see if I can read it. In terms of education, we have so much more to fight for. 300 lower court federal judges and a conservative-leaning Supreme Court means we are in a fight for our lives to even the playing field through ethnic and cultural studies, critical race, and other important approaches that help our people become more connected and empowered. Even with Biden, we can expect more implicit colonial mechanism of systematic oppression. If our education system doesn't begin to embrace the contributions of all its citizens, and I would say all of its humans, regardless of legal status, and provide means for healing through a truthful and uncensored versions of history, then we will continue to do the generations to come an injustice. And what do we mean by that specifically is that the state of California decided, our Democratic governor decided that ethnic studies was not a worthwhile subject to have as a graduation requirement in California. That is part of our election conversation. Our history is still not even on the back of the bus. It is not on the bus at all. Now, we saw some historic things happen in 2020, that the Native American and indigenous vote matters, and it matters, and our indigenous sisters and brothers are alive and well. We have to remember that when we have conversations about the United States, we are not a nation of immigrants. We never were. We are a nation of indigenous people, from the Choctaw to the Iroquois, to the Lakota, to the Mexica, to the Ohlone. It is indigenous people's land, and then immigrants came, and some of our people were forced into slavery and came as slaves. But this is not a nation of immigrants. This is a nation of indigenous people, and indigenous people said enough, and they voted in record numbers. We also saw a lot of historic firsts that are worth analyzing. Take a look.
Community is out in the streets protesting injustice. People want to see their leaders show up and just be with them. How do I save my son and my daughter and my other loved ones and the rest of our community from being the next hashtag step up and run?
I take pride in becoming the first openly LGBTQ elected official from New York City.
My name is Sarah McBride, and I am a proud transgender American. I've spent my life fighting for people to have dignity, peace of mind, and a fair shot at staying afloat and getting ahead.
I promise to stand shoulder to shoulder with you in this fight to better Oklahoma. My pronouns are she and they.
This is a long way from where I started.
Sounds like y'all ready for victory. Yeah!
So as we think about this election season and what is our reflection, if you only talk about the national presidency and you somehow say, well, 70+ million voted for Trump and 76 million voted for Biden, you will fail to see the change that is coming to Missouri, the change that is coming to Oklahoma, the change that is coming to Georgia. And so we salute a Black Lives Matter activist, Cori Bush, making history in Missouri, and the election of Richie Torres and Mondaire Jones and Sarah McBride and Maureen Turner. This is powerful stuff that's happening in the country that we must look at. And beyond that, though, we keep talking about red states and blue states. But is a change coming for everybody? And who is the change really coming from? Take a look at this map of the United States today. These are the percentages of our people who are without homes, y'all. We are seeing this throughout the country. There's no red here. It's all about blue, and we don't mean Democrat. We mean our people deeply struggling. So regardless of who the president is, and regardless of some of the elected officials are, we are getting more and more entrenched into intergenerational poverty in record numbers. 500,000 Americans are homeless. And I don't know if you know this, nearly half of all Americans sleeping on the streets, they live in California. By the way, some of you just turned on your sound, so if you could please mute yourself, I would really just appreciate that. I'll pause for a second. Gail, if you don't mind just putting it on mute, I really, really appreciate you. Thank you so, so much. Now, I want to ask you if it's okay to be critical, because some of you thought that racism somehow began with President Trump. And a lot of people celebrated the historic presidency of Barack Obama. No doubt, history in the making. And Barack Obama, well-spoken, an amazing family, you know, amazing First Lady in Michelle Obama, no doubt. But yet, are we also gonna ignore some historical facts that Barack Obama also became known as the deporter in chief? No president had ever deported so many people. than the presidency of Barack Obama. So when you're telling me that you're a hardcore Democrat and you're all about Biden and Obama, are you also for the deporting of over 2 million people, and especially for the Mexican people of the Southwest? This is their ancestral land. We didn't cross the border, but the border crossed us. So who are you really deporting? Who is the real illegal alien? I told you this is a nation of indigenous people, and the Mexican people, the Mexica people, are indigenous to California, Arizona, Nevada, Texas, Oregon, Nuevo Mexico. So why are our people still under attack, whether it's a Democrat in office or a Republican in office? This is an article from the Washington Post. Kids in cages, y'all. It's true that Obama built the cages at the border, but Trump's zero tolerance immigration policy had no precedent. This is what we're dealing with in this season. Imagine your son or daughter in this cage, ripped apart from you, from me, a 5-year-old in these cages under the Obama administration, under the Trump administration. So what are we going to see that's new? Really? When are we going to really fight for the amnesty of a people? Really? Who is going to really represent us? Really? Take a look at this.
The mass detention of migrant children.
They put me in a cage. I was with around 12 other younger minors. It was like a stadium, but with cages, and that's where they kept all the people.
Who's profiting?
Isn't there an incentive to detain kids?
There is a price incentive, but it's not a detention incentive.
And at what cost?
If this is a deterrence, the price is way too high.
Frontline and the Associated Press investigate. Tune in or stream on PBS starting November 12th.
Way too high.
I really appreciate.
This is a deterrence. The price.
At what cost?
I want to stop right there because I want to show you this image. Everybody's making a profit off of brown bodies. Take a look at all of these kids. Take a look at these blankets from the American Red Cross. Take a look at these cages. Take a look at the caging of kids. This is from a Democrat administration and a Republican administration. Tell me which one fully represents you. Yes, one calls me a murderer and a rapist, while the other one builds the cages and deports and locks up our people. Really? What are we going to do that's different? We really have to wake up and see what's happening in 2020. We have record number of people that are out on the streets homeless. We have record number of people that are about to be evicted. We have this reality, COVID, but we have had a cancer and a virus way before this. And that is that if anybody happens to be impoverished, we treat them like a criminal. Listen, if you happen to be poor in America and you're white, this country has the audacity to call you trailer trash. That is how horrible we think of poor people who happen to be white. And if we're calling white people trailer trash, what do you think we're calling the rest of society? I need to read this to you, and it's heavy. Identity politics is trash. Harris couldn't even make it to the first primary votes because her POTUS run was canceled because the left called her out for the enemy she has always been. Here comes the Democrats saying, wow, the first casualty of the primary race would make a great VP because she's a woman of color and that will bring out voters they need to win. And in a two-party contest, people are forced to accept her or side with Trump. Now, all of a sudden you see Oakland in the White House. No, Berkeley's in the White House and Oakland is still in jail. But political gang affiliates are so committed to red or blue that all else is up for compromise. This is the corporate oligarchy we live under that has young people and those truly on the left rejecting the system. When they do speak, they're ignored or dismissed. Now there is blame that defund the police hurt some Democratic causes, that the messaging is too divisive. What's divisive is state-sanctioned murder of our friends and family. The defund campaign accomplished more in 2 weeks of street protest in terms of accountability than the Democratic Party has since they stopped kicking it with the Klan. Yet they're going to critique what the best next move is. They're impotent. And not just because it's mostly 80-year-old men. Listen, I either have this almost 80-year-old man represent me that wears blue, or this 80-year-old man who are both white that wears red. We have elders that are fountains of wisdom. We also got old folks that are obstacles to advancement, especially when the status quo lines their pockets. Trump was trash, no question. This is someone else's opinion, by the way. I'm just sharing the word on the street. Biden, if he keeps true to the Obama foreign policy, which expect he will, he was the main voice informing it, is far more dangerous to our family in the Middle East, to North Africa, to the rest of the Americas. I'm disgusted at what this country can be in 20 years. But as for today, nah, we replaced a narcissistic white supremacist abuser with someone who, to be fair, isn't exactly that. That's a dang low bar, though. All this talk about emptying cages, from the vice president to the deporter in chief, and a woman whose career was intent on building and filling cages, reminds me of prison and some scandalous gente all of a sudden got pulled into the circle, and bam, all of a sudden we're hermanos and all is good and we stand for one another at all costs. Chale, homie. A lame is a lame, they say, regardless of their name or what they claim. Every one of those guys folded and took down plenty on the way. That's heavy palabra, y'all. And so I ask you to think about some intergenerational wisdom. And I would like to introduce to some of you, or to remind us, of Lucy Gonzalez Parsons. Lucy was so feared, an organizer in Chicago in the 1880s, that the city of Chicago banned her. And if you've ever been to Chicago, she would row a boat to Navy Pier to speak to thousands of people. All she wanted to do was end child labor. All she was part of was the 888 movement. 8 hours of work, 8 hours of sleep, 8 hours of play. She's the reason we have overtime pay. Lucy Gonzalez Parsons, part of the Haymarket affair. And this wisdom reminds us, please never be deceived that the rich will permit you to vote away their wealth. Come on, y'all. Please don't be fooled that because you have this person in office, that somehow this is going to trickle down to the poor. When have you ever seen a presidency trickle down to the block? When have you ever seen the people out on the streets be all right? When? And so when are we going to wake up and say, enough is enough? And so now the Black Lives Matter movement has been co-opted. All of these companies, from Nike to everybody else, seems to be about Black Lives Matter, and yet we are still incarcerating bodies, and we still have slavery legalized in America under the 13th Amendment as a punishment for a crime. I have never seen a single corporation say, let's end the 13th Amendment. I have not seen it. And when someone like Colin Kaepernick has the audacity to stand up and say, enough is enough, the entire system of the NFL said, we will never hire you again to teach you a lesson to be quiet. So we have co-opted the Black Lives Matter movement. Now everybody's got a Black Lives Matter t-shirts. I've got this little Black Lives Matter sign, and yet Black lives don't seem to matter at all. They don't seem to matter when they're out on the block, when they're homeless, when they're about to get evicted, when gentrification is hitting everywhere else. And who is speaking about that? What national figure is really talking about that right now? I have not seen them at all. And so what do we do in this couple of minutes that I have? If you really want me to talk to you about the election, I think every single one of us has an opportunity to address the empire within that lives inside of us. We all have internalized white supremacy because we have all grown up in a white supremacy culture. It shows up as self-hate, and it shows up as despising others. It shows up how we react to people and how we see the problems of the world. And so the best thing that we could do, if you really, really dislike what Donald Trump says, would you please analyze the Donald Trump that lives inside of you, the Donald Trump within? The second thing is we have internalized patriarchy, from chauvinism to gender roles to pay. And so what does it mean, not for us to level the playing field, not for equity, but for reparations? What do reparations look like by and for women? That is something we have to address. And how does that show up? How does patriarchy show up for those who identify as men and women and non-gender binary human beings? How does internalized patriarchy show up within? How's it going to show up for the holidays? Who's going to cook? Who's going to wash dishes? Who's going to do so-called certain labor? It shows up everywhere, y'all. It's going to show up these holidays when you see the family next week. What about the internalized classism that we carry? We have a disdain for the poor. I mentioned earlier, we cannot stand poor white people. We as a society call them trailer trash. And we always say, not in my backyard. I don't want to see no homeless people. We just have such a disdain for poverty. And it's been raised in us. Listen, we even do the most ridiculous things. When we used to fly on airplanes, those of you that have been lucky enough to fly in an airplane, we do ridiculous things like we say the people in the front, they're in the upper class, they get to eat some food, and we have this fake veil where you could see them eating, but you can't eat with them. No, you can't go to the restroom when you want to. They can do it because they have money. Or you go to a freeway and people can drive faster in the carpool lane because they have the money to pay for it because they got that pass, but not you. We always privilege the rich in everything that we do, and it's internalized. And so what does it mean for us to live a career and a life path where we take this on? Now, my question is, where is the activism within? And the first thing is, how do we self-assess? How do we check ourselves? What are we going to do this Black Friday? Are we going to just be capitalist? Are we going to continue this oppression? Are we going to continue to offer materialistic gifts and live in a materialistic society and continue to hoard more and more and more and more when all of our people are getting evicted and in the streets? And then we're going to blame it on politicians? How do we listen to our families, y'all? And how do we challenge white supremacy, patriarchy, and the classism within from our own mothers and fathers and ourselves and our partners? How do we challenge that with love? Not lead with what we know, but how do we truly listen to our very racist grandmother and mother and challenge that? How do we challenge when someone is talking smack about immigrants, about Muslims, about poor people, about people of color? How do we channel our life's purpose, y'all, to stand for what is right, especially when no one's looking? We have an opportunity this election season. You could actually vote every day. You could vote with your thoughts, with your actions, with your dreams, with the way you carry yourself. And listen, COVID hasn't killed you. 2020 hasn't killed you. The storms haven't killed you. The fire hasn't killed you. The toxicity hasn't killed you. You are still alive. You have weathered these storms and you're weathering these storms, and the ancestors are clapping and rejoicing. The question is, what are you going to do with your life? Are you going to stand idly by? Are you going to let someone else speak for you? Are you going to let someone else represent you? That is not what we're called to do, my people. We have to vote every day, everywhere. Tomorrow, y'all, what's going national is this video. They're making a documentary tomorrow about our humble organization called Homies Empowerment. I'm not a citizen, y'all. I'm not even allowed to vote. I've been paying taxes in this country for over 30 years, and I do taxation without any representation. And you're about to see a little clip of Angelica, one of our community members, who is also undocumented. But we vote every day, everywhere. We are feeding over 10,000 people in East Oakland, taking care of our community. And this young man who goes by the name of Steph Curry recognized that and is offering some positivity. And tomorrow you will see this documentary. And I humbly say that if you care about this election and you care about what's happening, vote every day, everywhere, take on the empire within, channel your best selves, and build that new world, because it is indeed possible. This is the trailer for the documentary that will come out tomorrow.
Hey guys, I launched a Gift of Joy to highlight some amazing volunteers who, despite the state of the world, are still taking time to give back. I decided to team up with my friends at Rakuten and give a few deserving people a little joy of their own. Check it out.
Corey is nothing short of a superhero. We are here to give him a gift of joy.
HERSTORY is so amazing. She works 2 jobs and still volunteers her time to test residents in disenfranchised communities in COVID-19.
Heidi is such an amazing mom and deserves some joy. Let's do this.
This pandemic is not letting up. There's been so much happening back to back, but we can't forget to stop and make sure we have some moments of joy in our lives.
And as I close out, because you might ask me, what are your thoughts on the election? We have a long way to go. Yes, there's a lot of victories for us to celebrate, but the level and the indicators of kids in cages, of our people without homes, of our people being evicted, of maybe one of the worst recessions in history going into a Great Depression. There's enough indicators that are here that are teaching us that we have a revolutionary duty to stand up. And first, we have to stand up and look in the mirror, analyze the empire within, find our sacred calling, find a way out of no way, find what we're here to do on this earth, find our voice, find our path, take our action on, and speak out. Speak out every which way, especially at home and everywhere in your community. I'm excited for what's coming. I'm excited for the uprising. I pass it back to all of you that have organized this. I hope this has been useful. I thank you so much for listening, and I truly appreciate all of you.
Man, this is when being virtual goes wrong, because we need to be able to give you a standing ovation and you be able to hear that in a traditional like auditorium environment. Man, that was as they say in the community I work in, that was fire. And so we truly appreciate everything that you had to say. I feel sorry for myself because I gotta go after you. I don't even know what to say. The little piece that I have prepared is going to pale in comparison to what you said. But